kill your darlings. Do you really have to? I'm Shanna Swinson, and we're here to talk about writing. One of the most often repeated and most misunderstood pieces of writing advice is you have to kill your darlings. In other words, don't get too close to anything in your book. And if you love something too much, it may be something you're writing just for you, so it has to go. But this is terrible advice if you take it that way. If you have to get rid of anything you love, then you'd be left not liking anything in your book. And it implies that you can't trust your own judgment. I think this is actually a misinterpretation of the advice. A better way to think about it would be that you have to be willing to kill your darlings. In other words, you have to get rid of anything that doesn't serve your story, no matter how much you love it. So what are some darlings you may have to kill? Big one is description. Not that description's bad, but it does tend to make it to darling status because description feels like real writing. We hear in workshops about how you have to use all 5 senses to really set the scene, and it's so easy to wax poetic and create something really eloquent that feels award-worthy. In her satirical novel Cold Comfort Farm, author Stella Gibbons makes fun of this by putting asterisks by the passages that she thinks are particularly good. Now, the problem with this kind of description is when it doesn't fit the viewpoint character or the situation. So you may have written the most beautiful description of a sunset that's just poetic, really paints an image, but if your viewpoint character is a jaded mercenary who's been either fighting or walking all day, he's probably not thinking of the sunset that way unless he's got the soul of an artist or poet. But if you're not trying to say that about him, then it's going to be really out of whack. Or if your viewpoint character is on the run for her life, she's probably not going to stop to admire the sunset. So your description may be really pretty, you may be very proud of it, but it has to go. Another darling is your research is showing. You've spent a lot of time researching this topic, and by golly, it's going to make it in the book. So say you had to learn about the undergarments your character might be wearing in that time period and how she would put them on, so you write a full scene about her getting dressed, when that doesn't matter to the plot. All you need to know is she got dressed, and you can kind of even imply that if nobody faints when she walks into the room. Then the other kind of thing that is hard to let go of is the germ of the idea. There's something that sparked the idea for your story, or that was in what you imagined when you first came up with the idea, and you really want to put it in the book, but as the story develops, you don't need it anymore, and it's really hard to spot this. So I ran into this with my book Rebel Mechanics when I was getting revision notes back from my editor after the book had sold, and she wanted me to cut something. It was a scene that I had had in mind before I even came up with the idea for the book, and in fact it was part of what gave me the idea for the book. And she wanted to cut the part that I thought was critical, that had set off the plot and that gave me the idea for the rest of the plot, but I didn't really need it. I realized after I stomped around and grumbled about it a lot and looked at it again, and the way the book had shaped up, I didn't need that part, so it was a darling and it had to go. I also have a tendency to dream up scenes when I'm brainstorming a book, when I'm still coming up with the characters and the plot. I'll just think about the characters sitting around and having a conversation, and that's fun to do. And then I try to put that scene in the book, and I don't need it. Nothing really happens in that scene that moves the story forward. So I love the scene. It's part of how I envision the book, but it doesn't need to be there. Jokes are another thing that falls into the category of darlings that may have to die. It may be something you have written for you that's only funny to you or doesn't make sense out of context, or it may not be appropriate to the story, may change the mood. I often find that I don't get my jokes from draft 1 when I'm reading the book in draft 2, so that's a bad sign. Now, you don't have to actually kill the darlings. I don't. I just move them into a cuts file, and you never know when you might be able to use these things again. Your research scene may be needed in a later book, in the series or down the line. Uh, you know, putting on the underwear may be important if she's hiding weapons while she does it. You may need it in another book that's not even connected. I use some of my deleted scenes, those conversations, as bonus material on my website. Your description that didn't fit your viewpoint character may work for another character, so you don't ever have to throw everything away. I like to think of it more as find the things that don't serve the story and then get rid of them no matter how much you love them, rather than kill the darlings. So go out there and find the things that aren't working and convince yourself they don't need to be there, and happy writing.